the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond and AJ Applegarth.
Touchdown! All right, welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, Mr. AJ Applegarth. Glad you could finally make it, man.
I don't.
Yeah, we got nothing.
I don't care.
We're good.
I hate everything. Like I said.
All right.
Ready to talk some AFC North. Let's do this.
Yeah, so let's do that tonight. So as AJ said, we're talking AFC North tonight. So Ravens, Pittsburgh, Bengals, and Browns. But before we get into that, just while you're here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave those comments, and leave those 5-star reviews if you're on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're listening. We appreciate it. And of course, jump over to FantasySixPack.net, become an all-access member. You're going to get access to our award-winning rankings, our draft cheat sheet, the projections, lots of other things. So we do football, baseball, basketball, hockey. We do all that stuff. DFS golf as well. We got Dave Eddy rocking the DFS baseball right now. As soon as football chimes in, we got him and Chris Robin and Keith Fleming doing DFS football for us, so that they hit some home runs pretty much every single week. And you get to talk to us and them over on our Discord. Ask your personal league questions and your weekly advice questions for your DFS lineup as well. So that is where the money's at, in my opinion. That's invaluable. And, believe me, you guys will win your money back and then some. Yeah. So without further ado, let's just jump right into things here and bring in our first guest of the night. Good friend of mine and AJ's, Mr. Jeff Lambert, going for two founder, does stuff over with Fantasy Pros, and if you guys don't know by now, he hosts quite a bit of stuff for Scott Fishbowl coming up this weekend, and I'm proud to say I'm running a live draft in DC with you, Jeff. So happy to be running it back for year 2 of that. AJ will be joining us as well. How's it going tonight, man?
That's right.
Hey, what's up, guys? Obviously, thanks for having me on. And yeah, we're a couple days away now. We're going to be hosting that live draft. So it was a lot of fun last year, and hopefully this year it's a lot more fun and in a better condition with some AC, hopefully.
And yeah, I was going to say better condition with air conditioning. Yes, if there's no air conditioning, I'm walking out and drafting from home. Sorry, there will be no live draft.
It'll be
I'm guaranteeing
the gifts are on the table over there. Help yourselves. Don't bleed over it. It's fine. We'll make this work. And thank you. Good night.
Exactly. All right, our second guest here from Fantasy Six Pack, Mr. Corey Piper. What is going on, man? Happy to have you joining us tonight.
Yeah, man. I'm doing my Scott Fishbowl draft from home, where the air conditioning is nice here in Wisconsin. So no live drafts for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome aboard. Glad to have you on.
I definitely enjoyed doing it, but yeah, last year was quite the mess. Let's just say we will no longer be doing them at that location ever again. But I want to thank everybody for jumping in already here. I see Albert and Chad. What's going on, guys? So if you guys are ready, I think we should just hop into our first team here. And I'm not ready because I'm an idiot and forgot to share my presentation.
I even gave you so much extra time, and this is what you do.
I had it ready, and then I forgot to actually share it with StreamYard, and it is what it is. But we're here. There we go. AFC North Draft Guide. Those pretty thumbnails for all of our team previews over there on Fantasy Six Pack. You can check those out. I believe all 4 of these teams are done as of this live show right now. But the first team we're going to be knocking out here is the Baltimore Ravens. And we're starting with Derrick Henry. Look, we all know Lamar's like the guy here, but we know what Lamar is, right? Everybody's kind of, safety with Lamar. You know what you're going to get. Great quarterback. There's not a lot to really ask about him. He'll get involved with a lot of these questions, I believe. But let's start here with Derrick Henry, the newcomer on this team. Big acquisition this offseason. Look, he's been tailing off these last couple of seasons. Some of it is the Titans offense as a whole, right? But look, now he's come into a team that has been top 3 in rushing yards since 2018. A lot of that has been Lamar because they have not had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2019. Pretty crazy when you think about that. A running back hit 1,000 yards. Sorry, I believe Lamar has done it since then. But he's going as RB10, 25th overall. Like, do you consider that too low? About right? Jeff, we'll start with you.
I think it's about right. I think he definitely belongs in the top 12 at least. I don't know if I put him any higher than that because he doesn't have that receiving ability. I think his career high is 33 receptions, which you got there on the screen. That's as most as he's ever done. He has, 3 top 5 finishes in his career, but all 3 of those top 5 finishes, he had 300 plus carries. I don't think he gets that. 1, because he's older. 2, because like you mentioned, Lamar Jackson's there. He will take some of those rushing attempts away from Derrick Henry. And I don't think the Ravens' goal is to run him into the ground. I do think that they're going to want to limit his workload. He's an older running back. We always talk about the cliff. There's no cliff for Derrick Henry because he's, as big as he is, he's essentially a linebacker up there. So it's not the same cliff that other running backs have. But I don't see him getting 300 plus carries this year. Obviously, he won't be involved in the passing game. And even the Ravens, in general, don't pass the ball to running back quite often because Lamar Jackson is back there. And instead of taking down to the running back, he's just taking off and running it, which is, a little bit more efficient. So, yeah, I don't see Derrick Henry in the top 5, but he definitely belongs in the top 10. So if he's right around, 10, 11, 9, somewhere in that range, I think that's kind of where he fits right now.
Yep. Corey, what about you, man?
Yeah, so Derrick Henry's a volume rusher, and he's going to the team that led the league in carries. Since he came into the league, he has 2,030 carries. That's second in that stretch to only Zeke's 2,065. And then it's this massive drop-off to 1,571 from Joe Mixon. Now, he's led the league in carries for the last 5 seasons. The year he didn't, he had 219 in only 8 games. I think you just give him all of Gus Edwards' vacated carries. That's 198. Justice Hill had 84 last year. I can easily shave 40 off that. I'm at 240. Melvin Gordon and Tyler Huntley at 40. You're at about 280. That's where I can get to about him. I don't think he gets to 300, like Jeff said, but 280, I think that's possible. Even if he rushes for last year, it was a career low, right around 4.2, I think, it was yards per carry. You can still get close to 1,200 yards, probably double-digit touchdowns. I have him at 7. That's where I see it. It's a little above 10, but I can't get him in the top 5.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there, Corey, with the yard average at 4.2. He was tied for his lowest with 2017 in Tennessee, which was his second year. So kind of expected as the second year sophomore slump, at least from my perspective. I'm a big proponent of believing in the sophomore slump. Last time he saw that low was 4.3, and that was in 21 when he only had those 8 games. So I think that being, visible to Baltimore's games and seeing more of their games than most of the teams in the NFL because of me and Joe being in Maryland, I think Henry has a very good chance to surpass the 280. I don't know if I'm buying it yet. I love the breakdown you have there with the vacated targets, though. So I think that he's going to be possibly between the 280 and maybe like 305, 310. So where that lands to be determined, I guess. But obviously a power runner. This is the best fit for him coming out of this offseason. I think this is a great location, and he's not necessarily going to have to be the main guy because Lamar attracts so much from defenses. So he's still going to be the main guy in terms of the running back room, but Lamar's still going to get his. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this offense operates with Henry in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys bring up a lot of good points. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little on the fence with Henry. There are days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, we saw kind of like, Gus Edwards just like chew up touchdowns, during the middle of last season, right? And, pissed Lamar Jackson managers off to, I was one of them. Like, come on, give one of those. Like, it pissed me off. Like, Lamar was getting like 0 and Gus was getting 3. And it was, you're just like, oh, all of those are going to go to Henry. But it's like, but will they? Like, I don't know. Like, there's a part of me where it's like, I mean, he's slowed down. He's got a lot of tread on the tires, but he's also just like, I mean, he's a different human being than most running backs, right? Like, it feels like he's kind of bucked the trend where like he's been able to carry, have this workload year in and year out and really not wear down to a point where he's just worthless. But I think I'm somewhere in the middle, right? And I know that sounds kind of a cop out. So where I'm not ready to push him into the top 10, but I'm not ready to push him out of like the top 15. He's kind of fits somewhere right in the middle of there for me, to where I think there's going to be games where he's going to be awesome, but I think there's also going to be games where Lamar just takes over, right? To where in Tennessee that offense was him. Let's be real, like it really was him. And it's not going to be the case in Baltimore. So there's going to be there's going to be games where it's like, oh, where'd Derrick Henry go today? Oh, well, they didn't need him. But in Tennessee, they did that. They leaned on him. In Baltimore, they're not going to have to do that. So that's why
I agree.
I hesitate to put him in that top 10 conversation yet.
I don't think they're going to have to lean on him, and they know that, but I think there will be games, like you said, where they do lean on him. And because he's been such an anomaly as far as a picture of health, a picture of, volume throughout his entire career, really. It's just feed him the ball. He's going to go. He's going to get his yards. He's going to get touchdowns. Double digit, and it's great.
One thing I'm worried about with Henry and this offense is, we're expecting, at least some read options, right? Where they don't hand off the Derrick Henry and Lamar rolls out. But I don't know if Derrick Henry is a read option type running back, right? He's like a downhill, hand me the ball 20 times a game. Let me just batter these guys inside. But you get him going, outside, with the shoulders turned to the line of scrimmage. I don't know if he's going to be that guy. So I don't know, does that actually work out for him, or does it, is it going to end up kind of biting him in the butt because they're going to run those read options? They are with Lamar Jackson back there, but is it Derrick Henry overall?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That's for sure. I think it's, like I said, it's a great landing spot, but we'll see just how great once this preseason gets rolling.
I think it might be a better landing spot for like NFL purposes. Like, this is really going to help the Ravens. They haven't had like a stud running back that they've been able to just rely on. A lot of their guys have been getting injured. I mean, like Gus Edwards,
J.K. Dobbins.
You love him, but like, he's not, a stud running back by any means. Like, he's serviceable, right? And so you get a guy like Derrick Henry that can change some of those games, those close games where it's like maybe the passing game isn't working quite as well as they want it to. Derrick Henry, they're shutting down Lamar. They've got a couple spies on him. Oh, throw Derrick Henry in the mix. You change the ball game, right? And so that's where I think he comes into play. But let's move on here, AJ.
Well, I was just going to say, good points here. But one of these guys in this offense that could potentially be taking some of these targets away from Henry in the short game is Mark Andrews. And are we sleeping on Mark Andrews being potentially healthy again this year? Currently he's going as a tight end 47th overall, so that puts him right around the 411 pick. Corey, what are your thoughts on Andrews this year, and whether or not he can stay healthy?
I hope he can stay healthy, but I don't think we're sleeping on him. I think that's pretty fair value. For me, I actually have him 5th. So the 3 that are going ahead of him, you have Laporta, Kelsey, McBride, and then I actually bumped Kincaid over him. It's not that Andrews is substantially worse. I don't think he's going to be dealing with a nagging injury, but we just talked about this team's bringing in Derrick Henry. We already know they want to run the ball. And Andrews was averaging 6.1 targets per game last year. That's not going to rise. I don't see anything of that happening with Derrick Henry there. Meanwhile, Sam Laporta averaged 7. Travis Kelsey averaged 8. Trey McBride averaged 6.2, but you have to remember he had 15 targets the first 6 weeks. After that, he's averaging over 8 targets a game. And then, yes, Kincaid only averaged 5.7, but Buffalo vacates 240 targets between Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Dalton Kincaid led that team in targets. So, well, I think Mark Andrews is still a good tight end. I just don't think he will get the volume to be back up into the top 2 like we've seen him before.
All right, Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with him as well on that. You know, it's those guys that he has ahead. I think I also have Kincaid over Mark Andrews, and you know, a lot of times we talk about tight ends, and you know, we call them touchdown dependent, and you know, guys like these aren't necessarily touchdown dependent. They'll get targets, they'll get yards as well. But in Andrews' case, how many more touchdowns is he going to lose out to Derrick Henry? You know, when they get down close, he's not going to get those targets. He might get, you know, it's going to be Derrick Henry getting those touchdowns. So, you know, and then you factor in they got, you know, Zay Flowers, who had a really good rookie season. We expect him to take a step forward too. He'll take away some of those targets that Andrew was getting in the past, where he was just target relentlessly because they had nobody else to get them. You got Henry taking away touchdowns. You got Flowers taking away potential targets. You know, I think Andrews at 4th range is perfectly where he needs to be. I don't think he's being slept on. Obviously, the upside is still there. He's been tight end 1 in the past, not that long ago. I think it was 2 years ago. He was the tight end 1, so that upside is there. So if you take him at you know, tight end 4, and you get tight end 4 value, great. But you have the potential to get even more value. Andrews with the potential of being a tight end 1. So, but I think he's being valued pretty correctly there at the 4th or 5th tight end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with everything everybody's saying. I think Andrews is great. He hit the little to kind of jump into the next grouping of players and to make that, he does need his touchdowns, like you guys are saying. And you know, we see it here on the screen. Through the weeks that he was healthy, I've removed week 11, which is the one he actually got hurt in, like the first drive. So I kind of wiped that one out. But you know, he had the most touchdowns between weeks 2 and 10. Those are the weeks he played. He was 3rd in points per game, 4th in yards, 4th in targets and receptions. So he's right in that territory. And you guys are, you know, hit it spot on. Like Kincaid's up and coming, McBride's up and coming. Who knows? Maybe this is actually Kyle Pitts' year, right? I mean, like, you know, new offensive coordinator over there, new quarterback, somebody who can actually get him the ball. Like maybe he finally jumps up there. There can be a lot more competition up there that I think can bring Andrews back down. But Andrews is, I mean, as good as it gets, honestly. And to take him at the end of the 4th round, that's actually a player who I might actually be targeting a lot if he sits there and at that turn. That's a pretty nice player to have.
Yeah, I definitely like that positioning for my drafts. And, you know, looking at his targets, you know, they've been obviously increasing over the years, you know, kind of up and down. And then he went from 2020 to 21 from 88 to 153. So that was obviously a huge year for him. Played all 17 games. Only started 9 for whatever reason, but okay, that's fine. Still 153 targets. I mean, that just doesn't make sense, but you know, he's been a picture of consistency in this offense when he's been healthy and on the field. I think that he can do that again this year. And I think Isaiah likely is more of a handcuff than anything because of Andrew's health history. But I think he'll still be, you know, viable option in this offense, you know, on certain games. So but let's check out the receivers here. What do we got for Zay Flowers?
Yeah, so and of course my awesome pictures didn't show up. That's brilliant.
This is the best slide of the show. Just saying. I love those little pictures with the little like crooked lines between them, and it's really small.
I don't know.
So you just don't even know.
That was weird. It's like
you just don't even know what it is.
I just refreshed.
Yeah.
So you can't see it anyway. All right. So yeah, Zay Flowers. He's a guy who I have a tough time kind of projecting what he's going to do. So he had a lot of like short yardage catches and then like a lot of deep yard stuff, like not a lot of in between. It felt like, and then when you really look at like his efficiency, right? So like he really thrived without Mark Andrews on the field, and you know, rightfully so. I think that's to be expected, but like it was a pretty massive difference with Mark Andrews on the field. We're seeing here on the screen 41 receptions, 467 yards, 1 touchdown, averaged 8.5, almost 8.5 fantasy points per game. That's half PPR. Without Mark Andrews, 36 receptions, 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 13.5 fantasy points per game. So I think with Mark Andrews, it was 2 through 10. So like 8-9 weeks. And then without Mark Andrews, you're talking about the rest. So pretty good sample size, for both sides. Jeff, what's kind of your overall thoughts here with Zay Flowers coming into 2024?
So there's two ways to look at this, right? So you're doing with Mark Andrews, without Mark Andrews. You can also look at it as first half of a rookie season versus second half of a rookie season. And I think that explosion that he had, probably had something to do with Mark Andrews being gone as well. But I think it also had to do with him being a rookie, finally catching on to the offense and becoming a part of it. We see that trend a lot with a lot of rookie receivers where they kind of struggle early on and then later in the season kind of catch their stride. And I just pulled up his game log just to see.
He had 9 catches the very first game. Like how much
this is true.
Slow pace was there?
Yeah, he did.
And that was without Mark Andrews, by the way.
It's not enough.
Yeah. But he ended up with, from week 12 through week 17, at least in the scoring the league I pulled up, 23 points, 20 points, 22 points, 20 points. And that's what everyone's kind of pointing to, like, oh, he's going to have a huge year two if that trend kind of continues. Obviously, Andrews puts a little bit of a damper in there. And one of the stats that you put in the show sheet that's not up here is his percentage of, snaps or catches behind the line of scrimmage or targets behind the line of scrimmage is 27%. And then 20% of them, 20 plus yards and over. So essentially, it's like Mark Andrews is going to be covering that middle ground. He'll take the short little, the behind the line of scrimmage catches. He'll take the deep stuff. Mark Andrews works the middle. And if Mark Andrews is, back to what we know Mark Andrews to be, and he pulls those safeties in it all, then I think Flowers will get over the top. And Flowers is one of those guys that you get the ball in his hands any way you can, which is why those targets, behind the line of scrimmage are so high, because you make things happen with his legs as well. So I think it works out perfectly for Flowers to have a big season because he's not working the middle of the field where Mark Andrews will be working the middle of the field. He's either behind the line of scrimmage or he's downfield 20 plus yards. So I think it works out perfectly, and I'm expecting Flowers to have a huge season this year.
Yeah, I like the idea of it being just development from Zay Flowers, but I'm a little less optimistic on Zay Flowers. I just don't see the targets to being there with Mark Andrews. While Mark Andrews was there weeks 2 to 10, he was just very underwhelming. In half PPR, he broke double digits twice the first 10 weeks. The last 5 games, he looked good, but he also scored touchdowns in 4 of those 5 games. And I am not trusting the smallest player on a team that just added Derrick Henry to get a bunch of touchdowns. In the other game, he scored 1.7 points. So it's just very fluky. I think he's going at wide receiver like 29 right now. That's too high for me. I see him just outside, like top 35, somewhere around there for me. And so I probably won't get a lot of Zay Flowers. And if he blows up, great. I'm happy for him, but it won't be on my team.
Yeah, I think
AJ,
it's a good point, but I want to say I read it on Sleeper when I was doing my research on this. He only had 1 less target than Mark Andrews in those games where Andrews was on the field as well. So again, it's weeks 2 through 10. So maybe there is a little bit more to the rookie finding his way sort of deal with, I don't want to say better competition on the field with him, but the more trusted asset, we'll say, in Andrews. So obviously he blew up more in the second half. Without Andrews there, we can see that just on the slide here. But I agree in the fact that I don't know if I'm buying Zay as higher than a top 30 receiver because of the ad of Derrick Henry. So I agree with you there, Corey. I think that's a great point that we need to look at, and you need to see where these targets are going to be going, how this offense is going to be run, and see what's what. So all valid points. Joe, anything else to add?
No, I mean, you guys kind of covered both sides. I mean, I kind of like Zay Flowers, especially. I do think targets are going to be there. So in any kind of PPR format, I think he's fairly safe. Because, I mean, like, let's be honest. Even with Mark Andrews there's really only two guys to throw the ball to. So
True.
I know they throw the ball a lot compared to some teams, but when it's such a condensed target share, like Flowers and Mark Andrews are both going to be, pretty good there as far as PPR stuff goes. But yes, the concern that Corey brought up with the touchdowns again, that's kind of the scary thing about this entire offense is just who's going to score the touchdowns. It just feels like, going back to what I said with Derrick Henry, is there's going to be games where one of these superstars lets you down, and there's going to be many games, unfortunately, where that happens because there's so many good players. They're not all going to crush every week, and so that's just what you've got to figure out. So,
and the last thing I'll mention too is, in college, Zay Jones obviously just increased his workload, touchdowns pretty much every year at Boston College through all 4 years. So I think the potential for him to grow in year two is definitely there. Like you said, Joe, he's one of really two trustworthy targets. So, I mean, are we talking Rashad Bateman season SZN? Is that where we're at now?
Oh, no.
If I'm not mistaken, too, I just want to chime in real quick. I believe, if I remember correctly, Andrews actually came back for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It was in that game that Flowers had 100 plus yards, and I mean, he probably wasn't himself. Obviously, he hadn't played all year, but that's one
Andrews
thing to point to.
Absolutely nothing.
Still looking to Zay Flowers.
Yeah. So we actually have a question from Mr. Scampers here. At their respective ADPs, here we'll finish off with this as a little rapid fire. We'll go around the room. ADPs, who would you rather have, Zay or Andrews? So just to I go off half PPR. I just kind of do the happy medium here. So I'm looking at Fantasy Pros, 45 for Zay Flowers. I think they're back to back. 48 for Andrews. I mean, probably.
I go Andrews.
Yeah,
I think
probably
I'm going Andrews.
I think that's pretty nice. He is still one of the safe, lock it in tight ends. You don't have to worry about it. Once you pass him, there are still just a bajillion question marks. There's a lot of bust written on some of the guys below him, even though we all like them. We love Kincaid, but would it shock anybody if Kincaid completely did nothing this year? We're just like, oops. I mean, Dawson Knox a couple years ago, we all loved him, did nothing, and it's like, oh, everybody loves Kyle Pitts again, but how? Would you all be surprised if you let us down again?
Well,
no.
Arthur Smith's not there, so who knows?
I don't think Mark Andrews is going to disappoint, especially at an ADP of 48. So it's Andrews for me. So, yep.
All right,
let's move on to our next team.
Jump into some Pittsburgh Steelers. All right. So this is a very interesting team this year. We've got multiple QB1s playing to try to be the QB1, and we've got both Russ Wilson and Justin Fields brought in this offseason. Which one of these guys do we think is going to have the better fantasy asset value this season? And are you targeting either of these guys or just avoiding them altogether? Corey, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so in a traditional one quarterback redraft league, I'm just avoiding it altogether. If I have to settle for one of these, something went wrong with my plan, because I do not want neither Justin Fields nor Russell Wilson.
Abort.
Exactly. In a super flex league, I'll prefer Russ. I think he starts the year off as the quarterback, and as poor as he appeared last season, he finished QB 14. So there at least was some fantasy goodness in there, but in Dynasty in the long term, I still want Fields. I think under Arthur Smith, now we rip on Arthur Smith and we'll get that down here soon, but Ryan Tannehill in 2019 finished as QB 22 in 12 games, and in 2020 he finished as the QB 7 with his ability to move on the. So if Ryan Tannehill can do it, Justin Fields still has a lot more upside in this offense, but I just don't think he's going to get the initial chance to start.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I'm the same way. I'm going to be avoiding both of these guys just because we don't really know how it's going to shake out. Justin Fields obviously had a huge side. Russell Wilson is probably the safe play. If I super flex league, I would prefer Russell Wilson as my QB 3 or 4. Justin Fields would be like the later flyer, like have the guy on your bench and hope that he gets a chance, because that rushing upside is enormous, obviously. And interesting stat, I try to find it real quick from Mike Clay with Russell Wilson last year. He listed NFL offenses with more than 27 touchdown passes and fewer than 10 interceptions. There was one team, and it was the Denver Broncos last year, which is crazy when you think about it. Greater than 27 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions, and it was only the Broncos that did that. Russell Wilson is as bad as he, as we think he played last year. He actually wasn't that bad in that offense. I think it was overblown. They had a stretch there where they won a ton of games in a row because of Russell Wilson, and really with the Steelers, it's about winning games, right? They're not here to be flashy. They want to win games, and that's what Russell Wilson can do, and I think will do, which will also keep Justin Fields off of the field.
Yeah. All right, Joe.
I don't really have anything else to add here. You guys hit it right on. We'll just move on here. It's Russ and Superflex. I guess if you're playing like kick and punt returns, maybe take a stab at Justin Fields, because who knows what's going on there? Those little weird rumors, but no, it's Russ. And I actually think he'll do all right over there. Like, not great weapons, but Superflex, he'll be serviceable.
Now, if we're talking dynasty, Justin Fields, I do like him long term, because I do think Russell Wilson plays the mentor role very well. We saw what he did.
I actually saw a video today doing some research for this where Justin Fields was talking about how Russell Wilson's been a good mentor to him, and so it just feels like Russell Wilson knows this is kind of his last hurrah, and they're already sort of talking it up like this is the role each player is going to play. So this is why it's Russell Wilson for me, easy. So,
all right.
Yep. So, moving over to running back here, we got a couple pretty solid running backs here. So there was a lot of talk last year on Twitter, and I did I forget exactly what it was called. It was like the usage trend article here over on Fantasy Six Pack, and so constantly all over Twitter, all you heard was, "Oh, Jaylen Warren's the obvious play here for the Steelers." But when you went back and looked at everything, Najee Harris actually led this team in snaps and carries and everything else, and Warren was a little more efficient with it, but the Steelers were not going away from Najee. Do you guys think with Arthur Smith in town, how this kind of change? Does this change this year, or are we just kind of gonna get more of the same? And then who would you rather have? And Jeff, we'll start with you.
So who would I rather have? I do like Najee Harris this year. I don't think he'll ever get the targets that he had his rookie season, which I don't have that in front of me, but I know it was a ton, and that's why he had such a great rookie season. You see Jaylen Warren there on screen had 74 targets last year. He's obviously the pass catching back in this offense. But the Steelers did something this past offseason that I think helps Najee as far as his averages and everything else. And they went out and got offensive line, which they hadn't had done that in a while.
Yes.
So they drafted, I think, 2 guys in the NFL draft pretty high. So, that 4.1 average, if you raise that up to 4.5, 4.6, and, we hope it's going to be a better offense. Russell Wilson, you give him a couple more touchdowns there. All of a sudden, Najee Harris looks a whole lot better than Jaylen Warren, who's a great running back, but he's just not, he's getting the targets and he's getting sort of the, like you mentioned, the efficient touches. I think both of them would be viable, but if I'm going to have to choose one of them, give me the guy that's going to get a ton of touches, a ton of carries, and I'll take Najee Harris all day.
Bingo. Corey.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm in agreement on that one. I do think that Najee gets the bigger workload this year. He led the way in touches last season with the 284. Warren had the 61 catches, which is very valuable. The way that this changes and Warren does somehow beat him in touches is Russ Wilson loves to check the ball down. So the Broncos had 138 receptions last year between Samaje Perine, Javonte Williams, and Jaleel McLaughlin because he loves to throw the ball short. So if he's just dumping it left and right to Jaylen Warren, that could boost the touches. But last year, Bijan Robinson, obviously Arthur Smith coming from Atlanta, Bijan Robinson had 274 touches. Tyler Algier had 204. I think it's a similar split. I think we get maybe like 280 again out of Najee Harris, and like 210, 220 out of Jaylen Warren. And like Jeff said, they want to run the ball. They might even run it more than that. So I like Najee Harris, but I'm perfectly comfortable at taking Jaylen Warren at his ADP too.
Yeah,
I like your idea. Let's just mash them together and make one good player.
Najee Warren, best receiving running back ever.
RB1.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Not much to add. Najee did have 94 targets his rookie year. So that dropped all the way down to 53 the next year and down to 38 last year. So,
yeah.
All right. So let's move it over to receiver here. And basically, we obviously have a loss here with Deontay Johnson being traded, to Carolina. Not really any established veterans behind George Pickens this year. But do we think he's going to step up and be a true wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes? I mean, what are we looking at for the ceiling for Pickens this year? Corey, start with you.
I think he has the talent to be a wide receiver 1, but I don't trust the offense that he's in to get him to wide receiver 1 numbers, because I think they're going to have to change the way that they utilized him. So last year he led the league at 18.1 yards a catch, but he only had 63 catches on 106 targets. Well, Deontay Johnson's gone. Deontay Johnson operated underneath. I think we can get George Pickens closer to 140 targets, but in doing so, that 18.1 yards per catch is probably going to fall to 13, 12, somewhere around there. He's going to have to operate more underneath. Finished this wide receiver 26 and half PPR last season. I think he has a year something similar to what we saw from DeAndre Hopkins last year with Tennessee. 75 catches, 1,050 yards, 7-8 touchdowns. That probably gets him to bumps him up from wide receiver 26 to wide receiver 20. I just don't see there's a way that we get him all the way to the top 12.
All right,
yeah,
Jeff?
top 12 is probably pushing it a little bit. I don't have him in the top 12. I'm a little higher on Pickens than most. And I agree. I do think that 18 whatever yards per catch definitely comes down, but I think because of that, I think volume also goes up. And I think Pickens is a very Russell Wilson type wide receiver. We saw Russell Wilson sort of revive Courtland Sutton's career last year, and I think Pickens is a very similar receiver to Courtland Sutton. Obviously, a little bit more athletic, and obviously a little bit more of a downfield threat than what Sutton had a revival last year with Russell Wilson. DK Metcalf, all those years, he's a different kind of beast, but I do put Pickens sort of in that same sort of category. And I think efficiency also goes up with that volume. With him working the middle of the field more, with Johnson now gone, he still has the deep ball ability, so the team still have to respect that deep ball. And the one thing that Russell Wilson does throw is a very, very nice deep ball. So when he does get that behind the deep safeties, he can definitely get the ball to him. So I like Pickens, not top 12. I probably have him in my top 17, top 18, something like that, just outside of the wide receiver 1. And I think he will have some weeks where he hits that wide receiver 1 type upside. But there will be weeks where he doesn't, because the Steelers are running the ball and playing good defense, and he doesn't get volume. There'll be games where he gets plenty of volume for sure.
Yeah, so the only thing I want to add is that the George Pickens is the son of former Cincinnati Bengals receiver Carl Pickens, and Carl Pickens had a whopping 174 targets in his age 26 season, which was back in '96. George is going into his age 23 season, yet he already had 106 targets last year. So, I mean, he's on pace. He's on a better pace than his father, but times were different then. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Dropping the fantasy knowledge, AJ.
Dropping the nepotism fantasy knowledge. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm a little down on Pickens. I just, it's hard to really trust Russ Wilson in a field that's actually the guy. Like, it's almost worse. We just talked about how much we really think this team's going to run the ball and just lean heavily on this run game. I think we're looking at Pickens being pretty much exactly what Pickens was last year. I really just don't think his role changes. I think they're just going to move in guys. It's not like Deontay Johnson was awesome. He can slide in somebody into his role pretty easily. And we got Jamie over here in the comments talking about Roman Wilson. I mean, like, yeah, sure. Like, why not? I mean, it could be a whole slew of guys. It's just, it is what it is with Pickens. I think the talent is there. I just don't think the offensive scheme is going to be there to help him. He'll have some pretty nice games for sure.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be really aggravating to roster most weeks.
I mean, and the one thing to look at too with Russ, assuming that Russ is going to be the guy for the majority of the season, maybe, and depending on how this team goes, but Cortland Sutton was Russ's number 1 last year, and he had a very solid season. Only 772 yards, but he had 10 touchdowns. So, again, is this going to be a thing where Pickens becomes a, Sutton-esque touchdown dependent player? And the yardage may not be there all the time, but I don't know. I still think I'm down on him as well. Overall, I just think this team is kind of in a weird rebuild of sorts. Is the best way that I can put it. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens with that.
It's a very strange rebuild for sure. When you bring in a guy like Russell Wilson, and then you you trade for his replacement as well. Like it's such a weird. I've never seen a team do this before, but
yeah,
sure, go for it, Steelers. But all right, well, so I think that's gonna be it for the Steelers. Let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll start here with Mr. Joe Burrow. So my little title here is "In Joe We Trust?" ? And so I say that because he's been he's look, we know super healthy Joe Burrow is awesome. Last year though, like really I think and it sounds like he's admitted it, like he really kind of mismanaged that calf injury. He probably shouldn't have started the season when he did. And he had by far his worst season for the first 10 games. And of course the wrist injury. And of course there are some people out there, Twitter doctors is what if you want to believe or not believe them, whatever, their opinion is out there. And a lot of them say he's not going to be the same quarterback ever again. That wrist injury is going to hamper him. I'm just throwing out the information I've read. So with that all being said, do we trust Joe Burrow? He's going around QB7, 63rd overall. Jeff, what you got?
I'm still trusting Joe Burrow. I do think that the weapons he has around him, he still has Jamar Chase. We hope that he has a full season of Tee Higgins healthy. He lost Tyler Boyd, but was he really, really doing anything anyway? But I just think that offense is just built for Joe Burrow. Now, the two out of 4 seasons he's had season-ending injuries, which is a little concerning, obviously, especially for a quarterback that doesn't run a lot, right? He's in the pocket and he's getting injured. It's not good. But the weapons that he has and the offense that he plays in and everything is going to be somewhat familiar to him. He's not changing offenses, offensive coordinators, all that kind of stuff. It's all the same as it has been. And, if we believe that he mismanaged the injury last year because he was absolutely terrible for those first couple weeks, we can expect him to come back fully healthy and be the Joe Burrow that we've seen in the past. Now, if Tee Higgins hadn't moved on, maybe I changed my tune a little bit, but those two receivers, rival any tandem in the NFL. Like Tee Higgins, we all think, at least most people think, that could be a receiver one on a different team. So he essentially has 2 receiver ones out there to throw passes to. So yeah, I'm still believing in Joe. I do think QB7 is probably right where he belongs. I'm assuming that all the running quarterbacks are probably ahead of him. Obviously, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, those kind of guys are going to be over. Yeah. Joe Burrow's probably
there's a couple guys. Yeah, there's a couple guys below him that I think can be considered running quarterbacks, but they all have their other issues.
Yeah, it's basically with the running quarterbacks and Patrick Mahomes essentially right ahead of him, and then I think Joe is the next one.
Yeah, that's the ADP looks like. Corey, what about you, man? Anything different?
No, I think he pretty much nailed it. I'm perfectly fine taking Joe Burrow at QB7 off the board. I don't usually take quarterbacks that early, but I think that's pretty good value, actually. Those 2 years you see there, the 2021 and 2022 seasons, he finished as QB8 and QB4. So that's right in that range. Yeah, he started the season dealing with it was a leg injury, a muscle injury, and then it was actually the wrist that got him later. So it was a couple of different injuries, but the passing volume that Cincinnati should have, now that they've even lost Joe Mixon, I think 600 passing attempts from a fully healthy Joe Burrow is well within the realm of possibility again. And like Jeff said, you got Tee Higgins and you got Jamar Chase at least one more year here. So 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns. I think that's pretty much bankable.
Yeah, I mean,
anything
looking
different?
at it, as long as he plays 16 games, okay, yeah, he's getting me 30 plus touchdowns and 45ish 100 yards. If he plays 10 games, okay, at 23 to 26, and low teens for touchdowns. The big thing there, obviously, the sacks too. For finishing, would you say, Corey, QB8 and QB4 in those 2 years?
Yep.
I mean, 51 sacks, 41 sacks. That's spending a lot of time on your back too. I mean, that's like
that's how you get hurt.
Is this Derek Carr or is this or Joe Burrow? So I think I think QB7 is a fair ranking for him, and I'm perfectly fine taking him there as well.
Yep, I agree. So we'll just move on here.
All right. So looking at Tee Higgins, we just talked about him a little bit. This is probably his last call, if you will, as a Bengal. So what do we think we can actually expect from him this year? And overall, what do we make of the Tee Higgins saga so far? Corey, we'll start with you.
Oh, the saga is interesting, right? I don't know why Cincinnati hasn't paid him. They have $21 million of cap space right now. They have $37 million next year. They can easily afford to sign Tee Higgins, but they choose not to. So they keep dealing with it, but he's going to play one more year. Last year is disappointing, of course. He's dealt with tons of injuries. I think it was a rib fracture. I know he had a hamstring injury last year, and it's just that seems to be part of the Tee Higgins story, is just some nagging injury always seems to get him. While Jamar Chase could find success with Jake Browning, Tee Higgins was pretty much awful with Jake Browning under center. I think he averaged under 6 targets a game. Now, Tyler Boyd being gone does create some more opportunities in the slot, but I do think that more of that will go to Chase, actually. I think Chase has lined up more in the slot before. So He's going at wide receiver 29, which is right behind George Pickens. I will take Tee Higgins above George Pickens still. I will get sucked back into this. Keenan Allen's right in that range. I will still take Tee Higgins over Keenan Allen, who's going to a new team where there are 3 big targets as opposed to 2 now and a rookie quarterback. So I'm willing to take Tee Higgins a little above ADP and be sucked back in again and hopefully not get disappointed.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same wavelength here. Now, the numbers you have on screen, is this a projection? Because this wasn't his last year.
These are the
last
projections that are on Fantasy Six Pack. I believe they are going live tomorrow. So
Gotcha.
don't quote
I was looking at like, man, did he really have 1,000 yards last year?
Oh, I wish he had 1,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a fully healthy year of Tee Higgins. In that offense, we just talked about Joe Burrow and how good he is. 600 plus pass attempts is in the realm of possibility. And now that even Tyler Boyd's out of the picture, and Joe Mixon took some targets as well, these are going to be even more heavily targeted. And Tee Higgins, we can talk about it. He's probably not going to be there next year. So this is the quote unquote contract year, right? Like, he wants to get paid like a number one receiver. And the way to do that is to go out and have a monster year. So he's motivated to do that, to get that big contract with the Bengals if they end up wanting to pay him, or if it's somewhere else. But he wants to get paid. So the motivation's there. The offense is there. I think the target's going to be even more condensed to these 2 receivers. So I think the wheels are up for Higgins. And even as a Pickens truther, I too would take Higgins over Pickens as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about Higgins last year as like just outside the wide receiver 1 range. Like, it was kind of that, like, those wide receiver 2s, they be wide receiver 1s because they're that good. The offense is good. The quarterback is top notch. Why can't Higgins get back there? If we're all believing in Joe Burrow, why can't Higgins get back to that kind of production again? So I'm all in this year. Like, I've got him a little bit higher than his ADP. And I could see that climbing as we get close to this season. And we start hearing good things from camp and they're all flowing again, just kind of put it behind him and he's going to play for that contract. And we just all, wheels down, wheels up, let's go. Right. So I think Higgins is in for a big year.
Yeah, I agree.
So
what about the running backs, Joseph?
Yeah. So next up here, we're going to Zack Moss. And so obviously we talked about Mixon not being there anymore. So now they brought in Zack Moss, who had a good year last year in Indy. Chase Brown, the backup, was kind of mixing in, kind of good at times, but obviously he's playing second fiddle to Mixon pretty hard here. Zack Moss is going around running back 30 right now. For me, it's harder to like really know what we're getting here. Like, did they bring in Moss to be the guy, or is this Chase Brown, or is it a complete mix, like a complete split here? Which the projections kind of lean Moss, but it is still a pretty heavy split here. So, Jeff, go for it.
So I think this is one of those backfields that you avoid because we don't know. And I think the Bengals, I don't think even know. I think it's going to end up being a little bit of both. There'll be a little bit of a hot hand situation. I think they're both going to kind of vulture from each other. Both of them are decent pass catchers, nothing spectacular, but good enough. I think Chase Brown might be the more explosive of the 2, but Zack Moss is a little bit better of the inside runner. So I do think there's going to be a mix and matching. And, if you do draft one of these guys, they're going to be frustrating as hell because you're always going to start them on the wrong weeks, probably. So unless I get them below their ADP, I don't think I'm taking either one of these guys just because there's so much unknown with it right now.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he just said. Joe Mixon's an exceptional talent who can thrive in any offense. Zack Moss and Chase Brown are not. They're just not the running backs of Joe Mixon's caliber. So Moss showed that last season, I think he can be an effective 2-down back. And his 8 starts with Indianapolis. He averaged 16.5 carries per game, 70 rushing yards. I think that's doable with Cincinnati here. I think he can get that 16 carries again, around 70 yards. I don't think he's going to be on the field at all on third down. He had 5 drops on 35 targets. Chase Brown caught 14 of 15 passes that were thrown his way. So I think Chase Brown is essentially your third down back, and he probably does get a few touches. But just like Jeff said, I don't really want to trust either of these two. I guess if I'm desperate, I will take Zach. I prefer Zack Moss, but not players that I target.
Yeah, I don't know if I really like this backfield at all because Mixon's not there. I mean, he was a stalwart there. He was a solid option. You know, Moss has shown some flashes throughout his career. You know, more of his chances obviously came last year in Indy. And he excelled. I mean, he was good there, but I just don't know if he is an every down type of back. He's gonna need some help, and Chase Brown is a little more familiar with this offense. You see right there, his stats really aren't that bad. This is the projections again, I'm assuming.
Yes,
So,
yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, his stats really aren't that far off. The attempts are down almost 60 attempts, but it's 200 yards across those 60 attempts and half the touchdowns. Again, touchdowns are a crapshoot. We don't know what we're going to get. And with this offense being more of a pass first offense, I don't know. I'm just not really trusting either one of these guys.
Yeah, I think where we're going to see a lot of Moss get his value is in the red zone. Mixon was heavily used inside the red zone for this team for years. And if they're going to trust anybody in the red zone, it's going to be Moss. Now, of course, third downs, that's probably going to go to Chase Brown. But I think that's where you see the projections lean Moss big time, especially in the touchdown category, is probably because of those red zone touchdowns. So, all right, let's finish up with our last team here, the Cleveland Browns.
Let's go, dog pound. All right, so we'll start off with the quarterback here, and that's Mr. Deshaun Watson. Basically, we're just trying to figure out, can Deshaun match the production and or chemistry that we saw from Joe Flacco last season in his short run with this team into the playoffs? Holler Ravens. Joe Flacco is elite, right? Or is Watson or is Watson just going to be a disappointment, and that it just brings this whole offense down a few notches this year? Corey, what do you think about Mr. Watson?
I'm pretty much just out on Deshaun Watson at this point. He hasn't been usable for fantasy since 2020. He's dealt with multiple shoulder injuries last season. He played and then he missed a game, then he played again, then he missed some more, and then he was finally out for the season with a shoulder injury. And I don't like shoulder injuries on players that need to throw the football. It's no different than like a shoulder injury for a pitcher in baseball. That terrifies me.
Yeah.
So the rushing production of his first few years where he was rushing for 400 plus yards, that feels unlikely to return as well. He actually had a higher ADOT than I expected when I was checking this at 9 yards. I thought it felt like whenever I watched him, it was just dump down city, but he just makes so many poor throws. Pro Football Metric has a stat they could just call bad throw percentage, 20.6% of the time, which is essentially just an uncatchable ball. The only person who was higher was the 5'10" rookie with the worst offensive line in the league, Bryce Young. So beyond that, he just does not. He was so inaccurate at this point that I don't trust Deshaun Watson at all.
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm definitely not trusting Watson if he's my QB1, then I feel like I'm in trouble. I think, Watson is still kind of living off the Texans years where we think that, if he could just get that back. Well, it's been so long since we've had that. And even if he was as healthy and as athletic as he was then and all these issues hadn't happened, he's in an offense that, is not going to be able to produce a high volume quarterback in fantasy They have maybe the best defense in the NFL. They want to run the ball. They're in a place that has to deal with weather constantly. In Texas, where in Houston, where it was a nice weather most of the time, and played in the dome. So if Watt's my QB2, I feel a little bit more comfortable, and I have a feeling that a lot of the industry hate is pushing his ADP down even further to the where I might draft him as my QB2 in Superflex. Or if I'm a one quarterback league, I'm gonna wait on a quarterback and just stack up a ton of talent around him. I don't mind taking a shot on Deshaun Watson. I think it was someone put a stat out that in 3 of the 5 or 6 games he played last year, he was actually a QB1 in those 3 games. So 50% of the time he was a QB1. Now the other times that he wasn't a QB1, he was absolutely trash, but was kind of hurt his numbers overall. But I don't know. I think Watson, the upside is not there anymore. If you're taking Watson, you're getting him at your QB2, maybe even a QB3. But I don't think he's as bad as people think that he is. And I think that because of that ADP, I can see myself drafting him.
Yeah, Superflex leagues, I definitely want him as like a QB2. But I thought it was interesting because I did start, you start hearing a lot of things like, oh, well, with Watson there, the offense was so much worse than with Flacco there. Look at the stat I have at the bottom of the page here. Browns points per game with Watson, 28.6. With Flacco, 28.6. Like, it was just a different type of scoring. It was high flying. It was like, surprise, Joe Flacco can actually sling the ball still. Like, it kind of like woke everybody up. Like, we thought this team was dead, right? When Watson went out and Chubb was gone. It's a different offense when Watson and Chubb, was healthy. Like, they could run the ball, even though Watson wasn't really like, he's not running for 450 yards anymore, right? He could still get down and tuck and run a little bit, right? So that threat's there. Chubb is an amazing talent, right? When he was healthy, and it's like, so it's a different type of offense. But yeah, Watson is just somebody you can't really rely on anymore. So it really does kind of knock the entire offense, the whole passing offense down a little bit, I do think. Like, you're going to still get good games from Amari Cooper and a couple of the other guys, but mostly Amari Cooper. But for the most part, like, unless they change this offense around, and Jamie's over here chiming in saying that, they're rumored to be running more of the offense that Watson had in Houston. I mean, maybe that works. I don't know. I haven't heard that. I haven't seen that. I'm not saying it's not true. I just haven't heard it. But I'm out on Watson, honestly. So moving over here to the next question. Speaking of Mr. Nick Chubb here. So, look, we know how good he was, right? Or probably still is. We're just totally unsure if he's really going to get back on this field anytime soon. But I'm reading some stuff here from one of the beat writers, Noah Weiskopf from Cleveland. Currently, Chubb can run nearly full speed in a straight line, and the next step in the recovery is cutting laterally. I've seen videos of him like doing jumps over like little mini hurdles and speed skater type moves. So it looks like some of that cutting is starting to come back already, and we're still a couple of months away from the season. So I'm not saying he's going to start week 1, but dude, if there's anybody who can do it, and with modern medicine and like some of these surgeries, I think Nick Chubb can be a guy that can come back and really make an impact. I don't think we're going to see, the RB1 type numbers from him after an injury like that. But Jeff, what's your thoughts on him coming into the season and draft?
So I was trying to look it up real quick. When did he get hurt last year? Was it week 1 or week 2, something like that? Really early in the season.
Early. It was early.
1, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I know it was super early. So, I mean, essentially, he's going to have a full 12 months, or pretty close to it by the start of the season. If he's already running, full speed in a straight line now with Nick Chubb, and, he led the league or was always top 5 in, broken tackles because of his lateral movement. So that has to come back to be what he was before, or at least even to be, usable in fantasy, because that's where he got most of his stuff was missed tackles. He was never
hurt on October
week 2.
Week 2. Okay.
Was it? Oh,
he only played 2 games. He only played 2 games last year.
September 18th.
No, I'm sorry. I'm reading it in reverse order. I'm looking at his injury history. The top one is the oldest. Sorry, my bad.
Oldest.
Yeah, you're right. Week 2.
Yeah, so almost a full 12 months away. Now, it might be a situation like we had with Breece Hall last year, where early on in the season, you might be a little bit frustrated with him, but then come the end of the season, he's putting out those big numbers again. So, and I have to imagine that this trepidation with this injury is going to be lowering his ADP, where you can get a guy that's going to close out. You can get him as your RB2, RB3. And if he can close out a season like a Nick Chubb type season, from weeks, whatever, 8 on or 7 on, you'll be more than happy to take that at his current ADP.
Yeah.
So for me, it's generally going to be a pass unless he falls a little lower than his ADP has it currently. This is the second time he's injured that knee. He tore it up pretty good at Georgia too. I believe he tore his ACL there. And I know he's had at least 2 surgeries on that knee. Now I've seen the hopping videos as well, but it's good. It's great. I hope he makes it back in time, but stability drills on your knee and hopping laterally on your leg, that's a long way from running in a pad and getting tackled in your legs. So their bye week is week 10. That's about when I'm expecting him back after that bye week. And I will not play with someone on my bench for that long when there's so many other players that are going to become available. So I'm just probably going to pass at Nick Chubb, barring a pretty good fall below his ADP.
I'm
Now,
looking
let me
at
ask
his
you,
ADP is 39 for running backs. I mean, I'm looking at some complete garbage after him. I don't know.
So who's
I
after
might
that?
pull the trigger. I mean,
Who's
you're
some
looking
after
at
that?
Zeke? Do you want Zeke? Kendra Miller, maybe.
I take Kendra Miller and
There's
Zeke.
not a lot. There's not a lot of good names.
I don't like Zeke, but at that location, I guess I do.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. It's interesting. I really want to see like decent reports coming from Cam. But if I'm drafting right now, I'm kind of with you. I'm out on him. But it is an interesting conversation to have because his ADP is pretty low. So it could be worth the risk. I mean, like if you get him at that, and he actually does come back like week 3, week 4, week 5, that is a steal, right? Like that's a home run. But yeah, then you run the risk of him sitting on your bench and eating up a spot that possibly half the season if not more, and that's hard.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, moving over to another new face here in Cleveland, and that's Mr. Jerry Jeudy, now on the scene. Are we downgrading Amari Cooper at all, or does this move with Jeudy coming in not really worry you regards to Cooper's overall production? Corey?
No, I'm not really worried at all about Amari Cooper's production dropping with Jerry Jeudy coming in. I think Jerry Jeudy steps into the Eli Moore role. He had that awful concussion that doctors sort of advised him to even consider retiring. I think he's still on the team, but that's what I'm seeing with Jerry Jeudy. But Amari Cooper's just one of the safest selections there is. He missed the last 2 games last season with a heel injury, but before that, he hadn't missed a game since 2019. His worst finish was back in 2017 at wide receiver 31. Since then, his worst finish is wide receiver 26, and he's going essentially at that value right now at ADP, which is drafting him at basically his floor, it seems like. So last year, aging like a fine wine, man. Most receiving yards of his career, deepest 8 out of his career, farthest yards for reception of his career as he's getting older. I think Amari Cooper is just really safe. This is somebody you can pick as your wide receiver 2.
And I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I think there's no downgrade for me for Amari Cooper at all. I'm not scared of Jerry Jeudy. He's been disappointing since he's been in the league. We all hope that he's going to break out, but at some point we have to just give up. Maybe he gets new life here with the Browns, and ends up being a decent receiver 2 in this offense. But he's not taking anything away from Amari Cooper. Wherever you had Amari Cooper ranked pre Jerry Jeudy is the same spot I'd have him post Jerry Jeudy as well.
Joe?
Yeah, you guys are spot on there. I did find this stat pretty interesting. So, at the Buffalo on Twitter, one of the beat writers I think he's a beat writer for the Browns. Anyway, he wrote about makes sense why the Browns traded 2 late round picks for Jerry Jeudy. Last season they ranked 20th in total yards after the catch. Jerry Jeudy, that's like one of the things he actually is pretty decent at, right? He was 6th among wide receivers with at least 80 targets last year with 5.9 yards after the catch. So if there's anybody that like can be better than, for them, it kind of fits the offense. But for fantasy, Amari Cooper's totally fine. Jerry Jeudy is gonna do Jerry Jeudy things. It's gonna be frustrating, and it sucks, man. I really had high hopes for him. I thought he was gonna be great, and he just turned out not to be. He's just like a good player, not great.
All right,
AJ, anything or?
That's yeah. That's all I got.
All right, so. What we'd like to do to finish off all these division draft guides is talk about our wild card player of the division. And so what this is a player that kind of has a wide range of outcomes. So kind of, if you want to call it like risky player, somebody who could be a league winner or a bust, whatever you kind of want to call it there, it kind of floor's wide open, really, with how you perceive it. But Jeff, we will start with you. Who is your wild card player of this division?
So I'm going to go with the guy that we already talked about on the show, and I was the only one that seemed to like him. I think that was Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers is the guy that has a very wide range. I can write the narrative that they got Derrick Henry, he's going to take away the touchdowns. Mark Andrews is coming back, he's taking away the targets. And Zay Flowers is going to become the third fiddle. But then I can also see the scenario where those two guys being there makes this offense even better, draws the defense to Derrick Henry, pulls those safeties in, trying to stop Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers gets behind the defense, gets the deep touchdowns. Mark Andrews is working the middle of the field. The safeties can't double team Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, catching those little short intermediate passes for unpredictability. So I'm going to go Zay Flowers. I think there's a narrative for both ways where he can end up being a bust from where he's being drafted, but I also think there's a way where he can explode and be, a huge asset to your team and even end up being in the, high-end wide receiver type territory.
Corey, how about you?
So we just talked about how I probably will end up pass on Nick Chubb. I will not pass on Jerome Ford. He is going 37th among running backs right now. There's a possibility that Nick Chubb's superhuman and recovers early, and then Ford's a bench option. That's the bust, and then he's worthless. But it seems more likely that Nick Chubb's not back right away, and you have a primary ball carrier for the Browns for what could end up being the majority of the season. And I saw Jamie put something in the chat about D'Onta Foreman. I'm not worried about D'Onta Foreman stepping into the Browns offense or Nyheim Hines. I think those are depth pieces. I'm not worried about them taking carries from Jerome Ford. What's to say that he doesn't step into a workload and put up a season similar to what Najee Harris did last season, like 1,200 total yards, 8 touchdowns? That's a top 20 running back that you're getting at pick 37 right now. And I'd like to see Nick Chubb come back, but there's nothing that makes me feel confident that it'll happen. So I like Jerome Ford at pick 37 among running backs.
AJ, who's yours?
All right. Well, I didn't speak on the last question about Amari Cooper because I'm going to speak about him now. This is a guy who, Joe, obviously you and I both have hated forever. And looking at his overall stats, I feel like the hate may not be as garnered as we've made it out to be.
I started that a couple of years ago when his ADP dropped out of like the top 12 receivers. I was in on him, but when he was getting drafted as the top 12 wide receiver, I was like, oh hell no, he was the most inconsistent mofo out there. Like, he bothered me.
The consistency still is an issue, but looking at the whole picture here, I do think that Amari could be the guy. Like, his bust capability is obviously what we know the inconsistency can be. So it might be a week-to-week thing, but it would also play in if Deshaun isn't really, Houston Deshaun, put it that way. But last year, he had his highest total yards. He had his highest yards per reception. Touchdowns were low at only 5, so that was down. But his yards per target were the second highest of his career at 9.8, behind the 10.0 he had it in Dallas in 2019. He played 15 games last year, so that's pretty good for him, I feel like. I just think that, add in some positive regression on touchdowns possibly, even with Jeudy there. I think that he's going to be the guy. He's still the number one there. Deshaun's got to figure out a way to get him the ball, and I think he's going to have his games. So I like Cooper this year.
He pulled an ultimate Amari Cooper and got everybody to the finals and then decided to get hurt.
Yeah.
That amazing 40-point.
And I benched him.
Oh, I remember that.
I benched him.
And you were like, I benched him. I was like, what? Why?
But I still won the match. No, it was Flacco. It was Flacco that I benched for that one.
Right. So I'm going with somebody we talked about, and it's Joe Burrow. Look, the risk of that wrist injury not being fully healed and him just trying to play through it is real, I still think. And he's still going, high enough in the QB picks there where that could hurt. You're still paying a fairly premium price for Joe Burrow in drafts when it comes to quarterbacks. There's a lot of guys after him who, yes, Joe Burrow is kind of that end of, what we would consider the elite, real NFL quarterbacks, right? And, the fantasy guys sort of get mixed in there that maybe not elite, but NFL guys, but really good fantasy. But there's a lot of guys even going after Burrow that's they're going to be just fine. Like Jordan Love's still there, Kyler Murray, now that he's got Harrison, Dak's right there in the conversation. You've got a ton of guys after him that it's I'm probably just gonna play it safer and not worry about Joe Burrow at the elevated ADP cost that you're gonna have to pay for him, and take some of these guys a few rounds later. And because Joe Burrow, he legit has top 3 quarterback finish in him, but he also if that wrist injury isn't right, if he just gets hit too many times, gets knocked out again, has top 20 quarterback, written all over him. That because he was not good. I think I looked it up. His points per game last year was QB 21. It was bad last year for him. So, and that's not total. That's not because he got hurt. He just played absolute garbage even when he was on the field, and it's because he was hurt. But even when he said he was healthy, he's not playing well. So, all right, guys, that is it for us. I want to thank both of you for coming on here and helping us out here with the AFC North draft guide here. Jeff, we will let you kind of remind everybody where they can find you and what you got going on this season.
So yeah, you can find me at on Twitter at Jeff Lambert 77. Of course, all of our content is over at goingfor2.com and Going for 2 live on YouTube. We are in the process shortly after the Scott Fish Bowl where we're going to be gearing a lot of our content more to audio video. So you will see a lot less written content coming from Going for 2 and a lot more, hopefully, audio video content. So that'll be a process that we write to live. And we're kicking off our division previews. We do ours a little bit differently on my show on Wednesday nights. The Armchair Fantasy Show kick ours off in 2 weeks. We do them in the form of a mock draft where we take a division and we can only draft players from that division. We do two rounds, 12 teams. It makes it a little bit fun. So we do that. So you can catch those on Going for 2 live as well.
Great. Thanks for coming on, man.
Awesome.
And Corey, where can we find your stuff and what you got in the works?
So you can find the Twitter at COPIEPS. And then, I do a lot of stuff here for Fantasy Six Pack. I do football and baseball. So I stay plenty busy every week here. And
yes, you
check
do.
it out.
We are happy for it. You are all over Discord too. So make sure you jump in there and talk to Corey here. So anyway, thanks for that, guys, for jumping in. And we will have to bring you on again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right, so that's it for the show, AJ. I believe next week we are back at it. Normal.
Thursday.
Are we back on normal schedule? I don't know. Things keep changing. So we're back on the 11th.
Yes.
We've got Mr. Bob Harris, and I believe we're bringing back. I gotta look. I just got it confirmed today, so I didn't write it down. Keith Fleming is back on the 11th to talk the AFC South with us. So that'll be a good show. Yep, you too, Mr. Gambers. Happy 4th, everybody. And yeah, so that's it for the show. Go hit that subscribe button, that like button. Go become an all-access member. And look, if you play in Scott Fishbowl and you want to preview, or even if you don't, you want to preview the draft cheat sheet that we have, the Scott Fishbowl version is completely free on the site. Go check it out, and you can see if you like it, and go get the real thing when the time comes. So have a good night, everyone, and see you next time.
All right.